Hey y'all, welcome to your first video book and my first video book, as a matter of fact, with me, Doug Millard. Okay, good to see you. Thanks for coming along for a little literary journey. The first book we're doing is Survivor by Chuck Palahniuk. I don't even know how you say his name. He's the author of Fight Club, which is a very good movie. Starred Mr. Brad Pitt and Mr. Edward Norton. It was pretty good. So we'll just get into it, and I hope you enjoy yourself. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Maybe this is working. I don't know. If you can even hear me, I don't know. That's a crazy way to start off the book. Oh, and by the way, let me just fill you in real quick. It starts with chapter 47. See that? It's backwards. That's silly. But it's also silly that it starts with 47 and works its way back to chapter 1. But if you can hear me, listen. And if you're listening, then what you found is the story of everything that went wrong. This is what you call the flat recorder of flat 2039. The black box, people call it, even though it's orange. And on the inside is a loop of wire that's the permanent record of all that's left. What you've found is a story of what happened. I'm turning the page. And go ahead. You can heat this wire to white hot, and it will still tell you the exact same story. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Boy, he sure does love to count. And if you're listening, you should know right off the bat, the passengers are at home safe. The passengers, they did what you'd call their deplaning in the New Hebrides Islands. I'm sorry, I screwed up that word. Then after it was just him and me back in the air, the pilot parachuted out over somewhere, some kind of water, what you call an ocean. I'm going to keep saying it, but it's true. I'm not a murderer, and I'm alone up here, the Flying Dutchman. And if you're listening to this, you should know that I'm alone in the cockpit of Flight 2039 with a whole crowd of those little child-sized bottles of mostly dead vodka and gin lined up on the place you sit against the front windows, the instrument panel. In the cabin, the little trays of everybody's chicken Kiev or beef stroganoff entrees are half eaten with the air conditioner cleaning up any leftover food smell. Magazines are still open to where people were reading. With all the seats empty, you could pretend everyone's just gone to the bathroom. Out of the plastic stereo headsets, you can hear a little hum of pre-recorded music. Up here above the weather, it's just me and a Boeing 747-400 time capsule with 200 leftover chocolate cake desserts and an upstairs piano bar which I can just walk up to on the spiral staircase and mix myself another little drink. Oh, that'd be great. God forbid I should bore you with all the details, but I'm on an autopilot up here, and until we run out of gas, flame out, the pilots call it. One engine at a time, each engine will flame out, he said. He wanted me to know just what to expect. Then he went on to bore me with a lot of details about jet engines, the Venturi effect, increasingly lift by increasing camber with the flaps, and how after all 4 engines flame out, the plane will turn into a 450,000-pound glider. Then, since the autopilot will have it trimmed out to fly in a straight line, the glider will begin with what the pilot calls a controlled descent. That kind of descent, I tell him, would be nice for a change. You just don't know what I've been through this past year. Sure don't, but I guess we'll find out. Under his parachute, the pilot still had on his nothing special blah-colored uniform that looked designed by an engineer. Except for this, he was really helpful. More helpful than I'd be with someone holding a pistol to my head and asking me how much fuel was left and how far it would get us. He told me how I could get to the plane back up to cruising altitude after he parachuted out over the ocean. And he told me all about that flight recorder. The 4 engines are numbered 1 through 4, left to right. The last part of the controlled descent will be a nosedive into the ground. This he calls the terminal phase of the descent, where you're going 32 feet per second straight at the ground. Good God, that is crazy! This he calls terminal velocity. That was a good movie starring Charlie Sheen, I believe. The speed where objects of equal mass all travel at the same speed. Then he slows everything down with a lot of details about Newtonian physics and the Tower of Pisa. It almost sounds like pizza, but it's not. He says, don't quote me on any of this, but it's been a long time since I've been tested. He says the APU, the auxiliary power unit, will keep generating Electricity right up to the moment the plane hits the ground. You'll have air conditioning and stereo music, he says, for as long as you can feel anything. The last time I felt anything, I tell him, was a ways back. About a year ago, that's sad. Top priority for me is getting him off this plane so I can finally set down my gun. I've clenched this gun so long I've lost all feeling. What you forget when you're planning a hijack by yourself is somewhere along the way you might need to neglect your hostages just long enough so you can use the bathroom. Before we touched down in Port Vila, I was running all over the place, the cabin with my gun, trying to get the passengers and crew fed. Did they need a fresh drink? Who needed a pillow? Which did they prefer? I was asking everybody, the chicken or the beef. Was the decaf or regular? Food service is the only skill where I really excel. The problem was all this meal service and rushing around had to be one-handed, of course, since I had to keep a hold of the gun. When we were on the ground, the passengers and crew were deplaning. I stood at the forward cabin door and said, "I'm sorry. I apologize for any inconvenience. Please have a safe and enjoyable trip, and thank you for flying blah blah airlines." When it was just the pilot and me left on board, we took off again. The pilot, just before he jumps, he tells me how much when an engine fails, an alarm will announce, "Flame out in engine number 1 or 3 or whichever," over and over. After all the engines are gone, the only way to keep flying will be to keep the nose up. You just pull back on the steering wheel, the yoke he calls it, to move what he calls the elevators in the tail. You'll lose speed but keep altitude. It will look like you have a choice, speed or height, but either way you're still going to nosedive into the ground. That's enough, I tell him. I'm not getting what you call a pilot's license. I just need to use the toilet like nobody's business. I just watch him out the door. Then he slows to 175 knots. Not to bore you with the details, but we drop to under 10,000 feet and pull open the forward cabin door. Then the pilot's gone. And even before I shut the cabin door, I stand at the edge of the doorway and take a leak after him. Oh man! Nothing in my life has ever felt that good. If Sir Isaac Newton was right, this wouldn't be a problem for the pilot on the way down. So now I'm flying west on autopilot at Mach 0.83 or 455 miles per hour, true airspeed, and at this speed and latitude, the sun is stuck in one place all the time. Time is stopped. I'm flying above the clouds at a cruising altitude of 39,000 feet over the Pacific Ocean, flying towards disaster, towards Australia, toward the end of my life story, straight line southwest until all 4 engines flame out. Testing, 1, 2, 3. One more time, you're listening to the flight recorder of Flight 2039. And at this altitude, listen, and at this speed, with the plane empty, the pilot says there are 6 or maybe 7 hours of fuel left. So I'll try to make this quick. The flight recorder will record my every word in the cockpit, and my story won't get bashed into a zillion bloody shreds and then burnt with 1,000 tons of burning jet. And after the plane wrecks, people will hunt down the flight recorder, and my story will survive. Testing, 1, 2, 3. It was just before the pilot jumped with the cabin door pulled inside and the military ships shadowing us with the invisible radar tracking us in the open doorway with the engine shrieking and the air howling past. The pilot stood there in his parachute and yelled, "So why do you want to die so bad?" And I yelled back for him to be sure and listen to the tape. "Then remember," he yelled, "you only have a few hours. And remember," he yelled, "you don't know exactly when that fuel's going to run out. There's always a chance you could die right in the middle of your life story." And I yelled, "So what else is new?" Man, this guy's dark. And tell me something, I don't know. And the pilot jumped, I took a leak, then I pushed the cabin door back into place. In the cockpit, I pushed the throttle forward and pulled the yoke back until we fly high enough. All that's left to do is press the button and the autopilot takes charge. That brings us back to right here. So if you're listening to this, to the indestructible black box of Flight 2039, you can go look and see where this plane ended, its terminal descent, and what's left. You'll know I'm not a pilot after you see the mess and the crater. If you're listening to this, you know that I'm dead. And I have a few hours to tell my story here. So I figure there's maybe a chance I'll get this story right. Testing, 1, 2, 3. So I figure there's maybe a chance. Wait, no, I already read that. I'm sorry. The sky is blue and righteous in every direction. The sun is total and burning and just right there in front of me. We're on top of the clouds, and this is a beautiful day forever. So let's take it from the top. Let me start at the start. Flight 2039, here's what really happened. Take 1, and just for the record, how I feel now is very terrific. And I've already wasted 10 minutes. And action. Well, there is chapter 47, kind of like chapter 1. Tune in for chapter 46 next time.